Hello and welcome back to the Atmosphere's Electric. It's been a while. I'm Rich and there's Fran. You haven't given up on me. You didn't run away, bud. How are you? Okay?
I am all right. No, I've not run away. I can't anymore, can I, with my hip? But
It's a bad joke.
yeah, no, I'm all good, mate. How are you? Recovered
Yeah,
from the bites?
no, if I'm honest with you, and definitely, I've definitely slipped back into one of the other problems I had whilst I was there as well. So let's just say food is at a premium. I'm not eating much again. I've definitely haven't recovered fully from the deli belly, but yes, good to be back. And more importantly, loads of exciting football to talk about. And of course, whilst away, the transfer window slammed shut. So you have to phrase it, of course. Uh, who do you think? We haven't done it, obviously, because we haven't really been together. Who won the transfer window in your eyes, Premier League wise?
I can't see how. I mean, with Isak coming, how you can say that it's not Liverpool. Like the firepower that they've added to that existing brilliant squad is unbelievable. So I can't see how you can't say it's not Liverpool. I think some of the fees that they paid are astronomical as well, aren't they? But I think the obvious answer is Liverpool. But I think if you're going to try and be a bit more obscure and look around for other teams that have done good business, I think you've got to go for Sunderland. I think some of the signings that they've made have been really good. Good value for money, young, hungry players. So if you're going to be a bit more obscure, I think Sunderland.
What about? I think we're all possibly kind of forgetting about the window that Arsenal have had, because I think actually, when you think about they've addressed some needs, they've addressed some gaps. They've got, I mean, they've arguably got, blimey, eight, absolutely top notch defenders. Signed another one for 13 million quid who came in when Sleep went off, effortlessly filled the gaps. I know they haven't got off to a great start aesthetically, but you've got to be saying that Arsenal have had a very good window as well, surely.
I think so. Did Hincape also join at the end of the
Yep.
window? Yeah, I mean
Yep.
he's a left back centre half. They seem to accrue these full backs who are also centre halves as well, aren't they? But no, they've definitely had a good window. I just don't know whether that Hincape signing, great player. I really like him. I think he offers a lot. He's pacey. He can play at full back centre half. But did they really need that? They've got Lewis Skelly there. They've got Calafiori there. They've got Timber who could play both sides. I just wonder if they needed that. I think they could probably have done with a bit more attacking players. Number 10 to help replace Odegaard and probably another winger. So and another striker to back up Jokeres because they don't really have a lot more backup to it as a genuine nine. So I liked the window, but I still think they could have addressed a few more attacking issues.
No, I completely agree. I think just when you look at kind of in one window, the difference from where you were to where you are is kind of what we're talking about, right? We're not necessarily talking about what the squad looks like. I understand the point around you've got to try and fix those gaps. Is there anybody that you think lost the transfer window? Who do you think definitely? I mean, obviously there's a couple of glaring peak teams probably, but anybody that stands out as a real disaster of a window?
I think the obvious one is probably Villa. I don't think they've strengthened at all. And Wolves, I think Wolves' window is horrendous as well, losing key players and not really replacing them, if I'm being honest. Um, I mean, there's other teams that you look at and you think, oh, it's been pretty average. But I mean, for Wolves and Villa for me, probably the ones that have had the worst window. I'm not sure on Newcastle's window as well. I think you could look at it in two different ways of it being a real positive that they have strengthened. But I think losing Isak and replacing them with Vissa and Voltemada, I mean, you're going to struggle to find a striker to replace Isak directly. So they've ended up with two. Voltemada for the fee, I think that's an astronomical fee for the player and what he's done so far. He's got obviously got potential to improve as a young player. But for somebody who's, I think he scored something like 15 goals, that's a huge fee on an unproven talent. Visser, on the other hand, I think is a great signing, but he's not Alexander Isak. So I think you can look at Newcastle one of two ways and go, you've lost key players, but they have strengthened with other players like Alanga. Again, I think the money they paid for Alanga is ridiculous, but he is a decent player.
Yeah, I actually don't mind what they've done. If I'm honest, I actually like the idea of Voltemada and Vissa. I think actually to get two good, Vissa, let's not forget, was one of the highest Premier League goal scorers last season. If you take out penalties, so he's
Such an
going to cost.
obvious
Yeah,
signing for the money.
absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a good sign. And Voltemada, I've watched a lot of him. And I do think that if Newcastle play, and this is going to the right way for him, I think he could be absolute dynamite. So I actually think they've done all right and the best out of a bad situation. Because, like you say, Isak, when on form, is obviously world class. So I think they've done okay. But yeah, Aston Villa obviously made a late splash with Sancho, Elliott, and Lindelof. Doesn't really
Panic
feel
signings.
possibly, possibly. And now there are lots of teams that know the price for Morgan Rogers. I think in January that could be an interesting one. So yeah, I mean, obviously not just looking at the league table after 3 games where Villa are in the bottom three, but actually the window wasn't great. But for me, Wolves are the ones that have absolutely gone backwards from where they were and are bang in trouble now from the get go, from game one. We said it before the ball was kicked. They are in trouble this season.
I agree, and like you said, the first few games of evidence suggest that, and then not actually replacing key players like Cunha scream to me that you're going to be in trouble. Like all the sounds coming out from the fans, the manager, I think that, like you said, they're bang in trouble. I'd be far more comfortable backing Sunderland, who have just come up to
Yeah,
stay up with Wolves this season.
100%. Yeah, Sunderland have had a fantastic window, even at the back end. Their player running alone. Like they've had a very, very productive window and have given themselves a real chance of staying up. However, they have been, for want of a better word, blessed by some other teams' poor business as well. So this could be the perfect storm, and maybe even two teams could stay up this year. I think that's still going to be a stretch, and of course we'll cover that as we go through. This week there has been a couple of talking points that we have to go through. The first one, obviously, is Nottingham Forest sacking their manager and replacing them with the former Tottenham manager in Postecoglou going to Nottingham Forest to replace Nuno Espirito Santo. Obviously, the talking point is around the styles of play. So we don't need to go into the fact we all know that Nuno was defence on the break. We all know that Postecoglou was all out attack essentially. I guess my question to you is: do you think that Postecoglou will have learnt from his time at Tottenham and would then use the Nottingham Forest squad differently, and therefore actually could be the perfect blend for Nottingham Forest to at least have a chance of that top six finish again?
Hmm. I think again you can look at this one of two ways. Is you can say that the current setup of the current players and how they set up is completely wrong for Postecoglou. But you could also say, well, if they're actually quite solid defensively, that's exactly what he needs to be able to implement some attacking flair players. And when you looked at that Spurs team, it had Van de Ven, who had pace, who was really well suited to a high line. The rest of the defenders weren't particularly pacey. They weren't rapid like Van de Ven. Whereas you look at the Forest defence, Murillo, Ola Aina, there's got quite a lot of pace in that team. So actually, they should be able to recover and probably play that high line better. My one concern is more around the ball retention. Is I don't think Forest are particularly, with the exception of Gibbs White, are set up to retain the ball and pass the way that Ange probably wants to play. So that's probably my one concern from an attacking perspective. And when you look at the way Spurs play, but I think defensively with the high line, they're probably suited to playing that way because they have got a bit of pace in defence.
So my take is maybe I believe, and I don't know anybody in the Postecoglou, so this is just a pure belief that if you go back and look at the last kind of games under at Spurs under Postecoglou, he had become more pragmatic. That final was an absolute dog of a game because the win was more important than the performance. I actually think that you will find a balance now with Postecoglou that he's got not quite got the same glare on him that he has at Spurs. I don't care if Nottingham Forest fans want to get angry about that. They're not as big a club as Tottenham, and therefore they'll have a bit more time. Okay, I understand that the chairman might be a bit more of a basket case, but nonetheless, I think it's the right marriage. And I think that Postecoglou will get the best out of that squad. I think Elliot Anderson and Gibbs White are strong enough in midfield to do what he needs to do. And so I actually think you'll see a slightly tamer version of Postecoglou that will get the best out of that Nottingham Forest squad. I think it's a very good appointment, personally.
Yeah, you're right. I was going to say, if you look at the end of his tenure at Spurs, he was pretty much defensive minded, wasn't it? There wasn't any attacking really. It was pretty much get the ball out wide and see what a winger can do. Which, when you look at Forest setup, that's very much how they're set up to play, isn't they? So, yeah, no, I think it's a good appointment, and I think the Premier League is poorer for not having Ange in it. So glad to see him back.
And early, again, no inside knowledge. This is purely a prediction. January, Brennan Johnson back to Nottingham Forest. You can put your left peg on it, Fran. It's going to happen. I'll tell you that for nothing. He's perfect for what Postecoglou wants. Obviously, the fans still got affinity with him. He's been there before. That, for me, I think he will start to drift out of the Tottenham team as the season goes on. I think that's going to be a no-brainer come January.
Well, Spurs have also been signing players like Yakudas, and you got Kulusevski. I'd imagine will shuffle back over to the right to make room for others who have come into midfield in the number 10 role. So it sort of makes sense that Brennan Johnson's going to be pushed further and further down the pecking order. And then if you look at the team, I mean, Forest have never been one shy of a PSR fiddle, have they? So it wouldn't surprise me if something is done there to remove the remaining book value from Spurs to Forest. So that would make complete sense.
Uh, but I am very interested. And of course, the way that football works is that the first game in charge, he goes to Arsenal away. Uh, and yeah, like I said, be very interested to see how they set up and how they handle that difficult challenge, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail when we get there. The final talking point before we move on to our predictions is, of course, England. Now, I know that you don't tend to spend too much time watching England. I don't know if you watched last night's Serbia game, but I want to touch on Saturday's game because for me that was a real concern in the way that England set up. Playing Andorra at home, to have two centre backs, two full backs, really two holding midfield players, whilst you know that they're only going to get into your half maybe three or four times in the whole game. I thought he got it completely wrong, and just didn't set the team up for that specific opponent, which worries me in cup competitions when you're playing an opponent that you might need to play a different shape. That was my concern out of this week, this kind of international break.
I can see both sides of the coins of fans complaining about the setup and the performance in general. Absolutely, England should be battering Andorra. However, 2-0, get the job done. And he's still relatively new, isn't he, to the role? The squad is new, so he's still trying to get his ideas across. And I think you saw yesterday what happens if a team attacks England a little bit more and opens up some space, that England are very, very dangerous. So I don't know whether the fans have just got a little bit carried away. Yes, the performance should be better against Andorra, but it's a win, World Cup qualifier. Yes, you can argue then that the tactical setup should be different, three at the back, whether you just play two at the back and you push people higher. But anyone who defends as a low block is always going to cause a team problems. They're going to stifle. Like teams that go out to just stifle the game always make the game boring and stifle them. So I can completely understand why fans are annoyed because you're expected to win. But hopefully yesterday sort of puts to bed some of the grumblings of that actually when we get to a World Cup or Euros and teams therefore have to attack more because they need to put points on the board to either get out the group or to go through a qualifying match, which is a knockout game. They have to attack more and therefore more space will come. So yeah, I thought it was quite nice to see the blend of actually the two performances against one a minnow and one against a higher ranked, not a hugely ranked team, Serbia, but away in Serbia is a tough game, isn't it? So I was quite pleased to see progression because if it had been dour again, I think there'd have been far more question marks. And now, actually, after the game, I think I'm looking forward to a World Cup. Whereas before that, I was like, oh, are we going to just start going back downhill now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think last night's game you do kind of have that bias removed because you've just focused on the last game, didn't you? And it was such a great performance, complete domination. Could have been 7 or 8 in reality. Serbia never really troubled Jordan Pickford. Uh, but again, for me on Saturday, I would have gone with one centre back. You don't need Dan Burn in that situation except for set pieces. So Declan Rice would have been my second centre back. I would have had two wingers as the full backs to create a completely different angle and from crosses, etc. But like I say, uh, we've played four now, or five, played five, conceded none, won five, 8 points clear. It's not a bad place to be. It just feels a little bit boring at the moment, but hopefully last night's performance is the sign of things to come. And again, a couple of new players played. Jed Spence making his debut. I think Elliot Anderson is making a name for himself very, very quickly as a very, very good player. So hopefully, just to have some squad depth off the back of these games is a fantastic thing as well.
I've seen a lot of talk around should England be going with your Elliot Andersons, Madueke's, and leaving out your Bellinghams, Palmers, and Sakas. I completely disagree with that take. I think you've got to take your best players, and in the case of Saka, as an example, over Madueke, yes, Madueke has performed well, but Saka is twice the player. You have to play him. But like you've said, what is proven is that if Saka's injured, or you need to change personnel with 20 minutes to go, you're 1-0 down, it's 1-1. Madueke is a great person to throw on, isn't he? Who's now proven he can do it at international level in a tough situation like Serbia.
Well, look, you've still got Palmer, like you said, Palmer can come in off the left. You've still got Foden that can come in off the left. assuming they're in form, of course, and not injured. Obviously Jack Grealish is starting to make a name for himself again in terms of, I know that's the other side, but when you talk about those players that sit behind, Jared Bowen came off the bench last night. I think a lot of people were pushing for him to start. Obviously, Anthony Gordon, I thought played really well yesterday as well. There is some great options now behind Harry Kane. I think actually the bigger worry for me is who is the understudy to Harry Kane, because actually I think we're starting to lack a little bit in that number 9 role.
I'm starting to lose faith in Ollie Watkins in general. So for Villa and stuff, he seems to have completely gone off the boil, doesn't he? Like before, I say a year ago, he was the standout backup player and actually had no problems with him replacing Kane. Now, if Kane's having a poor game, I still think I'd sooner have Kane on who's having a poor game than Watkins. So yeah, I think that's the one area where we are completely lacking. It's a shame Delap's just got injured because he seems to be the natural successor, young player coming through who we could be giving minutes to. But the 9 is definitely the area we need somebody to come through and prove themselves because Kane's only got a few years left, doesn't he?
Well, but more importantly, like I say, if he was to pick up a knock in the group game and not be able to play in a second round or quarter final, etc., the drop off would be quite dramatic, I think. And like I say, at the moment, I don't know who you put there as the backup. Obviously, Tony going out to the Middle East, sorry, not the Far East. The Middle East hasn't helped his cause. Like I say, Ollie Watkins, Solanke doesn't seem to be able to stay fit for more than sort of 3 weeks at a time. Who is the next number 9? But I'm sure, or I hope that throughout the season there'll be some people to put their hands up and come to the fore. Let's get to it. We've got lots of games to get through. A couple of unusual kickoff times, a couple of big blockbusters. But as we've already alluded to, the weekend starts at the Emirates, 12:30 kickoff live on TNT Sports. Arsenal host the newly appointed Ange Postecoglou with his Nottingham Forest team. Uh, let's start with Arsenal. How impressed or unimpressed have you been with their start to the season? Obviously, played 3, won 2, so they're on 6 points, there or thereabouts. Have you been impressed with how Arsenal started, or are you kind of falling into that they're playing horrible football and I can't bear to watch them sort of camp?
Both, if I'm being honest. I think I don't enjoy watching Arsenal play. I don't think they're the fluid team that we sort of got to know Arsenal being. They are, however, a team that goes and wins a title with the way that they set up. They're very defensively secure, have got 7 or 8 central defenders playing across the back four and can play in all those different positions. So I'm impressed in the sense of they look a good side who are going to be hard to beat and are going to pick up lots of points, whether that be 1-0s, 2-0s, they're going to win a lot of games. From an excitement point of view, very unimpressed. But if you asked an Arsenal fan, what do you want to be? Do you want to be Arsene Wenger, swashbuckling football, not winning a lot? Or do you want to be 1-0 to the Arsenal that's going to win titles? I think I know what answer you're going to get. So I think the answer has to be that we're impressed with how they're playing from the sense of winning games.
But have they lost the league already by going to Anfield and losing? Because actually that could have been, this Liverpool team don't look like they're going to lose many games this season. That was a real moment for me in terms of early on of Liverpool stamping their authority on the season, and actually Arsenal are now really potentially already playing for second place.
It, yeah, I think those sort of games, like you said, you have to go to do not lose the game and make sure you take a point and then you level pegging. However, I do think Liverpool have looked a little bit shaky. They didn't look good against Arsenal. I thought for the first half, Arsenal battered Liverpool, and it wasn't a battering as in it was wave after wave, but Liverpool hardly attacked. They hardly got out their half. So I don't think the league's over at all. I think Liverpool have showed enough weaknesses so far this season that teams will take points off them, and there's obviously a reverse fixture. So I don't think the league's over at all, and I think Arsenal are the sort of team this season to keep churning out results and winning 1-0 here and there to keep putting pressure on Liverpool.
Yeah, the thing that, and this is going to sound a little, because I understand the goal difference looks impressive because obviously they absolutely humped Leeds. But my worry for Arsenal is actually scoring enough goals. They're not going to concede many. We know that. They're absolutely going to be, probably the best defensive record because Liverpool have already conceded loads of goals. They're far more open. Uh, I just worry about Arsenal's, even with Eze, even with Odegaard, even with Saka back when he does, Martinelli, Gyökeres. I still feel like they're going that it could be the lack of goals that stops them, not the goals they concede.
100%. So it definitely won't be goals conceded, but I think that's where this sort of one, don't concede and score one, you're going to win games comes in. So I think they will win 1-0. And you're right, that Leeds games definitely elevates their goal difference, but they're going to win a lot of games 1-0. And I think from a betting perspective, 1-0, 2-0 is going to be where you should be plumping Arsenal most weeks. But you're right, lack of goals, especially against good defensive teams. I say Liverpool, Gyökeres looked completely ineffective, didn't he? He's not got the pace to run behind when he's coming up against Van Dijk, strength for strength. He's not strong enough to sort of hold off the defenders. So, I mean, I like Gyökeres, but I think from a fantasy perspective, Gyökeres is definitely one to have in against the lower ranked teams. I think he'll score a lot of goals, but against good teams, I don't think he's somebody you should have in at all. I don't think he's going to be threatening.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that actually. I think yeah, for me, like I say, I need obviously we need a bigger sample size, and it might all click, and all of a sudden Arsenal start banging in the goals. But I'm just a little bit worried at the moment about where their goals are going to come from. Again, obviously set pieces are obvious opportunity, but they need more than that if they're going to be the team that we think they're going to be. And of course, but they play Nottingham Forest. Now we didn't really touch on the window that Nottingham Forest had. Uh, Obviously, they've got Douglas Luiz in. They got Callum Wendo in, who was a forward that lots of teams were looking at. James McAtee, who a lot of people in the game think has got a big future. Amari Hutchinson now. Dan and Doy, obviously from Bologna, who had a great season. For me, the signs that Postecoglou were coming were in the transfers that they were making. For me, they are signings for Postecoglou, not for Nuno. And actually, I think they've got the right manager. And I think the one thing that maybe I haven't really heard people talk about is that I think that Postecoglou will get Morgan Gibbs White back to being Morgan Gibbs White more than any other manager, because he's looked. Let's be honest, let's call it as it is. He's looked half baked a little bit in terms of obviously with the impact of the summer transfer not happening. I think Postecoglou going there gives them the best chance of getting him back. So actually, this will be quite interesting to see how Nottingham Forest attack and how they line up, because there's a lot of players there that are going to be playing their first or second game for Nottingham Forest at the weekend.
And also, you mentioned the signing of Douglas Luiz. That's the signing that will probably free up Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs White to be a bit higher. Because when I look at that, I said they've got Ibrahim Sangar, haven't they? But yeah, I don't really think he's hit the levels of what he did at PSV. I think they just need a little bit more of that defensive structure, which Douglas Luiz will certainly give them. And he is good on the ball. He'll be able to find passes, get them in the half space, on the half turn. So, yeah, right. I think Morgan Gibbs White is probably the one player that will benefit the most from Postecoglou going there. My concern for the game is that he's had 2 days training, and I think it's probably just going to come a little bit too soon for Forest to understand what Ange wants. People on international duty as well will come back, today? Minimum. Like, so they're probably going to have 1 to 2 days training, which I think is just going to come slightly too soon for them. So I can see Arsenal having a pretty comfortable win.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what he does with Igor Jesus as well. Obviously, big transfer in from Botafogo. Nothing to see here. I think that will be interesting, because Chris Wood, again, what happened with Nottingham Forest last season, again, some of a few teams that had a good season, is that they didn't pick up many injuries. They were able to get their best 11 out on the pitch most weeks. And so actually it's going to be interesting for me to see what he does and how he can add to that piece. I'm not a massive fan of Hutchinson, if I'm honest. I think he's probably a little bit overrated, but I think Ndoye, I
Agreed.
think McAtee and Kalawembo could all add some value to that 11, obviously losing Alanga. But they've still got Hudson Ndoye, who again I think maybe isn't quite at the level that people think he is. But I think Nottingham Forest are going to be all right. I think they're going to have a pretty decent season. I think they could go quite far in the Europa League, if I'm honest. I think they've got a squad that could probably do a little bit in there. But I agree with you that actually this game's come a little bit too early, and I think it will be a home win. And I am going to go for Arsenal 2, Nottingham Forest 0.
Ding, 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 ding. I do your noises that you normally do. Yeah, no, I agree too. No, I think Arsenal will just have far too much know-how, obviously know-how for how they're playing, as opposed to Forest and Ange having 2 days together. It might just be a bit disjointed for the first few weeks.
I'm very comfortable they're going to be fine now. I've got no worries for
Yeah, yeah,
Nottingham Forest. I just think that this is a big game to, like I say, it's even the early kickoff. Like it's not even Sunday at 4. Even if it get another game in, another day. If it was a Sunday kickoff, like I just think that everything's going against them in this one. So, like I say,
yeah.
Arsenal. Arsenal.
Interestingly, I put a poll out on I think it was on somebody's tweet, and we had 250 people vote on it, and it was just how do you think it's going to go because of the change of styles, and it the answers were relegation, mid-table, Europe, and it was 40% relegation, 40% mid-table, 20% Europe, which I don't think relegation's even a shout for them, to be honest. I think their squad's far too strong.
No, I think if you haven't learned anything over the summer with football fans on social media, is you should just ignore them, all of them, because there's
Mm,
so much guff spoken about. I mean, I got so many frustrations over the summer social media. Some of the stuff that people were doing, the transfers that people. Oh my god! Anyway, yeah, don't get me started, please. So yeah, you're going to get a load of people that don't like Nottingham Forest that are just going to vote relegation. They're going to look at the Tottenham position of 17th and think that this squad. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but Nottingham Forest are not in risk of going down. There are at least 5 teams worse than them, if not 8 teams worse than them. They'll be mid-table and maybe
I
pushing for a
agree.
European spot.
I agree.
Uh, a really interesting game always, and really difficult to predict. Really difficult to know what the bloody hell is going to happen. Bournemouth host Brighton, 3 o'clock kickoff. Obviously, Bournemouth off the back of a fantastic performance, and a result that should have been a lot clearer. 1-0 away at Tottenham doesn't do Bournemouth justice. They absolutely killed Spurs. It could have, should have been 4, 5, or 6 against the Brighton team that I'm still not fully engaged in who they are and what they're going to be. Uh, so this for me is a really interesting game, but a very difficult game to predict.
I think it's a difficult game to predict. I have therefore sat on the fence, so you know my score already. Um, I like what both teams do. I thought Brighton beating Man City the other week. I thought they were really poor for 60 minutes. Then all of a sudden, City made some subs, and it just made Brighton come alive. But it was obvious they were going to equalise, and then when they equalised, I thought it was pretty obvious that they were going to score again. I thought they were the team that was on top and dominating. And when you look at some of their players, I thought Minter has come on again from last season. I thought he looked superb. Matoma was a bit worried about. I don't think he had the best of games, and he didn't look like when he's at his best, he's powerful dribbling. He seems to have lost that direct running at the minute. I fear for him a little bit, but I agree. I mean, if I was going to go anywhere, I think I'd probably go for Bournemouth. I think they've got a bit more physicality and directness about the team. But I mean, I'm sitting on the fence 1-1. But I think if you're going to ask me to watch a game, I think this would be a great game to watch.
Yeah, and I know we've spoke about this a lot over the years, but for me, I'd just like to say what a phenomenal, like, forget the results, just to be able to put a team out with losing all of those players that they've lost, Kirkes, Huijsen, Zubamendi, you lost the goalkeeper as well, just crazy amounts of players that you've lost that were actually in that first team that were part of the DNA of who Bournemouth were last season, to come and do what he's done and get them playing a really exciting brand of football where everyone knows what's going on. I just think it's a fantastic job he's doing, and so I think for me, we were worried a little bit over the window about the players they were losing and what impact they might have, but those concerns have gone for me because again, they've kept 2 clean sheets, albeit you could argue that you'd expect them to beat Wolves maybe by more than 1-0. But going back to the first game of the season, the very first game, I thought they did a fantastic job of giving Liverpool a bloody nose. And actually, it was only the last sort of 10 minutes that Liverpool, or even 5 minutes, that Liverpool scored those 2 goals. So I've been really impressed with Bournemouth. Whereas Brighton for me is still completely up in the air. I don't know who they are or what they are, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, Brighton for me are the new Fulham, as in you don't know what you're going to get from them. They'll be fantastic 1 week, and the next week they'll probably be really poor. Bournemouth, though, I agree with you entirely. After the first week against Liverpool, I think we both said they would be absolutely fine. They looked rock solid defensively against a good side, and attacking wise, they cut Liverpool open numerous times. And I said they've gone on and won the next 2 games. I think they're a good side. Some of the signings they've made, True Fair. I mean, he's always been touted around clubs, and I remember watching him play for Rennes against Leicester, and I thought, "Who's this left back? He looks quality." When they lost Kirkes and he's come in, after seeing him in the Premier League, I think he's an upgrade. I think they've moved Kirkes on, who's been awful for Liverpool, by the way. I think he's looked so out of his depth. But true fair, I think he looks quality. So they've sold a player for huge money and brought somebody in who's better. And they continually seem to do it, don't they? It used to be Brighton and Bournemouth are becoming on par with Brighton and what Brentford used to do. Like they just sell players at the right time for good fees and bring in replacements for cheap fees who seem to just hit the ground running.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about when you look at the business that Brighton have done. They're almost, I think they're trying to be almost out Brighton. there comes a point where this kind of constant stream of ins and outs is going to catch up on them, and I worry whether this might be the season. I know that there's some big expectations of Costellas, who they're signed in from Olympiacos, but João Pedro has shown what he can do at Chelsea. Obviously, this kind of relationship they've got with Chelsea and their subsequent clubs has meant that they've even lost. For me, so I know this isn't to them, but Estepinian for me was a bit of a surprise to lose him to AC Milan. I think they've lost Enciso, who I thought was quite a useful squad player, as was
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.
Yeah.
So I just worry that they've maybe gone a little bit too far this window, and the players they've brought in, I'm not as confident as I have been with the Brighton recruitment. So actually for me, I'm actually going with a Bournemouth 1-0 victory this weekend. I think Brighton will be fine, but I'm not very impressed with what they've done this window, if I'm being completely honest.
I think I agree with you on Brighton. They seem to be just on the decline, and we've mentioned selling clubs, which Brighton are, and most clubs are in the world. I think probably only two that aren't. But Brighton recently have tended to sell, and then like Caicedo got sold, and in comes Belieber, and he looks unbelievable. Get that?
You can have that one for free,
Unbelievable.
everybody.
Yeah. But he looked unbelievable. But then you sell Belieber, and then where do you go from there? You can't just keep picking out golden nuggets consistently. Eventually, a transfer is going to fail, and that for me is, I think, like you said, they keep going down this route of finding these obscure signings. Some of them will work, some of them won't. But if you end up with one window where most of them are misses, very quickly you decline. And sometimes I look at some of the players they've signed, and they don't look nuggets to me. They look decent players, but if you end up with a squad of decent, you just end up dropping down the table. And I think you're starting to just see the decline.
Yeah, I worry. But again, let's hope that's not the case. And I'm sure the Brighton fans will be moaning at us like other teams do whenever you say something negative about their team. And of course, Brighton have a history of success. So who are we to doubt them? But like I say, this window feels a bit of a worry. So you've gone for a draw. Have you gone? Did you say 2-2 or did you say
1-1.
1-1?
1-1.
1-1. Okay, I've gone 1-0 to Bournemouth. But again, I think that will be a very interesting stylistic game to watch, as will Crystal Palace, who host Sunderland at Selhurst Park, 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. Uh, Now, Crystal Palace feel to me like they should have been on the crest of a wave. They've won the FA Cup, in the Europa League, absolutely buzzing. Excuse the, but now they're not. They're not. They're in the Conference League. They've lost some of their players. It just feels like the mood around Crystal Palace is almost the complete reverse of Sunderland, who have come in and are absolutely flying and they're enjoying every second of it. And I just worry that Mark Gahey obviously not happy about the transfer to Liverpool not happening. He's one of your bread and butter main players now. I just worry, there's loads of rumours about Glasgow not being happy. I just worry about Palace's mindset at the moment.
I don't. I completely understand that, but I think that the manager is more than good enough to shake this off. I think the result against Villa proves. I backed Villa. I backed Palace that day, and seeing what Villa have done, and there was worry about Palace losing players, but I think people still gloss over the fact that they're a bloody good side.
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just feel that even though there is rumours around you, Gray, he is super professional. It won't affect him in the slightest. Glasner, there's no way that he's going to let his levels dip because his next move is quite possibly to a massive club if he keeps performing the way that he does. So I don't think there's going to be that many problems around Palace. And I think, like I said, they're a bloody good side with some good players. They score goals, they play good football. So I don't think there's going to be any problems with Palace. I think some of the noise, logical noise around players and managers and stuff makes sense. I think they've just got some good professionals there who mentally will just deal with it.
Yeah, and let's hope that's exactly what happens because obviously, like you say, they've done some amazing work, and I thoroughly enjoy watching them play. Everybody understands the role. Again, it baffles me how one team can play 3-4-3 and look dangerous, and another team, guess who, play 3-4-3 and don't look anywhere near as dangerous. And of course, the one transfer that did kind of make me stand up is that Jeremy Pino, who was someone that lots of people have said he's a really, really talented young player that we should be keeping an eye out on. So I'll be very interested to see if he can fill that role behind Mateta. And again, if they can keep Mateta fit and scoring, they've got a chance in any game because he's fast becoming one of the elite Premier League number nines.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, Jeremy Pino, he's a football manager legend for years. And he's also been sort of fulfilling his prophecy of football manager youngsters. He looks a very good player, and if they can get him fit, firing, getting used to the Premier League, get him to hit the ground running, you've got an Eze replacement there already. I do think it's going to take him a little while to adjust, and he's not going to be Eberechi Eze straight away. However, for what they've paid for him, with the potential that he has, it's a bargain.
It could well be. I completely agree. And of course, some. I mean, you mentioned that maybe someone's going to be the new Fulham. I think we could argue maybe Sunderland are, because actually uh, they've won the two games that you might have thought they're struggling, and then lost comfortably the game that you thought they'd do well in. Obviously, losing away to Burnley 2-0, but having beaten Brentford and West Ham relatively comfortably in both games. Forgetting all of that though, just it must be an amazing time, mustn't it, to be a Sunderland supporter where you've come in the Premier League, you sat on 6 points, so effectively you're joint third, in terms of points. You've given West Ham a good shooing, you beat Brentford, and now you've got what will be in your eyes a winnable game against Palace. It must be some time, mustn't it, to be a Sunderland fan?
Especially as for years now they've been a horrendously managed club, have dropped down the leagues. They've had documentaries done about them where
Yeah.
everyone is sitting watching them and laughing about them. Yeah, it must be amazing to be back in the big time, and then also have the backing of the owners to go and drop 180 million, whatever it is, and go, do you know what, we're giving this a bloody good go. Whereas you see other clubs of previous years go, 20 million here and that's it. So it must be amazing to, especially the transfer window,
Mm.
player after player come in, you're going, oh, who's this? Like next week is another one, another one. So yeah, it must be great to be a Sunderland fan at the minute, and then to back it up with results as well, because there's nothing worse than coming up and get tanked.
Well, and scoring 5 goals in your first, normally the teams that come up struggle for goals. That's the biggest difference, isn't it? Like, you get punished with that one mistake where whoever it might be puts the ball in the back of your net and you struggle to get the ball in their net. But to score 5 goals against what you wouldn't say were easy teams, like I say, we didn't think they'd be on 6 points at this stage of the season. Most people thought they might struggle a little bit in terms of to get off the running, but 5 goals in 3 games. And again, the biggest compliment I could give them is that this should be, for all sense and purposes, a home banker. We should be going all in on Crystal Palace. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have gone with a Palace win. I've gone Palace 2, Sunderland 1. But like you said, I've not put that in going banker. I've done that thinking, oh, Sunderland could nick something here, and therefore they're not in my £5 challenge. So I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, no. So I've actually done something a little bit different, just because we always say the same thing and it's a bit pointless. But so I've actually gone for a Sunderland win, and I've gone 2-1 Sunderland. But that's with no. Well, you can probably tell by my voice. That's with no confidence whatsoever. I do not expect that to come in, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. I know that doesn't make any sense, but you get my point. I hope is that uh, I think it could be a really good game. By the way, I think this could be
Yeah, I
another one
think
of those
good.
kind of underrate under. I would have quite liked this one to be like Monday Night Football.
Well,
Uh,
this is the point I was just about to make. Is we've got Man City, Man U is the last game, which and it's being billed. It's put there because it's Manchester City versus Manchester United. I couldn't give a toss about watching that game if I'm being honest. I think that's got the potential to stink the place out. There's some other games in here which are being put at 3 o'clock. You won't be able to watch them. That have got the potential to be crackers. And I think we're going back to 10 years of what Manchester United used to be. They're poor now. Like they shouldn't be getting these games anymore.
Yeah, look, and I suppose whilst we're there, obviously, I have just come back from holiday, obviously, a European country, and was able to watch 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday. In fact, all of the games, pretty much whenever I wanted. It does still feel a little bit weird that you can travel around the world and watch more Premier League than you can in this country. Now, unfortunately, whilst I was away, I did get to see Man United play Burnley, which on paper, the score looks exciting, but my God, that was a bad game of football. It was not good, but I could watch it, and actually, yeah, like I said, I just think that we have to, there was rumor of this kind of Netflix concept of £10 a month and you can watch all games. We've just got to get there now, because actually, I don't know about you, but my TNT subscription's just gone up by another fiver. Sky's about to go up by another five. Yeah,
Well, you wonder, and then they wonder why people buy dodgy sticks
yeah.
because nobody wants to pay 200 quid a month to be able to watch half the games that you should be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I do get the logic of we're trying to protect the small clubs, but the reality is, I'll ask you the question. I won't ask you the question because I know you went last night. But when was the last time
But
you?
that's an isolated incident. I only went because it was a Tuesday. to go and watch a local non-league football. Whereas in general, yeah, on a Saturday, I would never go. I'd sooner watch a team on the telly, regardless of whether it's my team or another team. I'd watch it on the telly, so it's not going to have an impact on non-league football. If you go to non-league football, you go regardless of who's playing on telly.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And in today's world, could we think about maybe changing the kickoff times for step 5 and step 6 and step 4 teams? So maybe they kick off at 1 o'clock, so that actually, if Tottenham and Arsenal, I'm thinking of where I live, not where you live, but they're the big teams around where I live. If they were on at 3 o'clock, you can still go and watch your local step 4 team, get back in time, or how
Watch it in the
about
bar.
watch it in the bar and put more money in the club? So actually, you'd be helping the clubs deliver more income, because all of these football clubs are struggling. And in the reality of it, and again, I do have a look at the attendances. There's very few teams at step 5 that get over 100 people come and watch a game.
So
Yep.
the game I went to watch yesterday, there was 600 people watch, which is a great attendance, isn't it? But it was because it was a Tuesday night and it was first
Well,
versus second, so there was some interest in the game. If it was a Saturday, that doesn't get over 100.
it's step 3 as well, isn't it? So again, it's they're starting to get a little. Or is it step 2 even?
Not sure.
Yeah, I think it's step 3. They're starting to move up the line. They spend some money on players, so they would have a bit of a following. You know,
Mm.
it's a case of like who do we want to protect here? But anyway, like I say, I would have loved to watch Palace versus. For me, that's Monday night football written all over it. I love watching the games at Sellers Park under the lights. But unfortunately, of course, it's behind the 3 o'clock wall, so we won't be able to see it. And there's actually even 3 more games behind that 3 o'clock wall. So Everton host Aston Villa at the new stadium. That doesn't feel right. It doesn't slip off the tongue just yet, which is probably lucky based on what it's called. Uh, this one last season would have been an away banker. Is this one this season a home banker?
If you were gonna ask me to go either way, I would 100% be going for Everton. But I've gone for a draw just because I'm just not, at some stage Villa have to pick up. They have to. You'd imagine, they have brought some signings into the club. I think they will have a boost of the feeling around the club. People like Jadon Sancho coming in, regardless of whether we rate them or not. New signings coming into the club do boost the players around them. So I think Villa will pick up. Whether it will be enough to beat Everton at home, I don't know. If they can stop Jack Grealish, that's the one thing I'm thinking as well. Villa surely have got to pick their game up for Jack Grealish. You'd expect them to. But if they can stop Jack Grealish, I think you go a long way to stopping Everton.
I've been really impressed with Everton. I think actually, the new owners, the new board, the new chairman or chief exec need to take some credit here. I think and by the way, the fans do too, because obviously they've really got behind the new stadium and all that it brings. Uh, I think they're in a good spot, and I think this actually could be the perfect time to play Villa, because again, going back to our logic with Nottingham Forest, those players that we're talking about, the Elliots, the Sanchos, the Lindelofs, they probably haven't had any training sessions or many training sessions with enough of the players around. So actually, this might be the last good time to play Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And for me, Everton have got enough now about them in terms of, Dewsbury Hall's coming and made an impact, and Jai still looks like a player. They've got obviously Barry up front that's doing a good job, and they've got Beto that can come on. Like, I just feel like for the first time, Everton aren't reliant on one player. They've got a couple of options, and I think they've had a great start to the season. And I'm really actually happy with. And you think about football and be careful what you wish for. I tell you what, I bet all of them West Ham fans would have David Moyes back now.
I think we said that when he's gone, though, weren't we? A bit of be careful what you wish for. And then especially when the people who came in to replace them, you're looking at it going, are they actually any better? No. So yeah, it is be careful what you wish for. Even from the sense of Villa as well, a couple of seasons ago, everyone, and rightly so, was pumping up Villa, what they'd done, the players they brought in. But now when you dig a little deeper, you scratch underneath the surface and you find out what they're paying players, the level of turnover compared to wages being paid, you think they've actually been a bit mismanaged. You've had a year of success to now you are hamstrung by PSR and it is all your fault.
Yeah, again, we can go round and round in circles, can't we, on whether PSR is the right metric and the right, but it is there, and everybody knows what the rules are. So you should be able to adhere to them. And again, to run it, I think it was, what was it, 98% of your income is
Yeah.
going out in wages. Is it doesn't matter what you could be running a bakery, an online shop, or a football team. that is not rocket science, and that is
Not
not sustainable.
Yeah, that's not sustainable. And like you said, you're right. I mean, the rules are not fit for purpose. They do hamper clubs from progressing. However, regardless of the rules, having that turnover to your wages percentage of 90% is not sustainable for any business in the world. So, yeah, they have been mismanaged. It's been a bit of short term success, hasn't it? Which is now really hamstring them, which is mean they're having to sell players who they didn't want to be able to compete. You thought that we were almost done after selling John Duran. You thought that's PSR done and dealt with, selling John Duran. But had to go one step further. It looks like their next prize jewel, Morgan Rogers, is next on the list.
Yeah, they've done well to hold on to him. They've done well to hold on to him. But like I say, for me, you know, Aston Villa are just overpaying for players. Daniel Marlin's on 140k a week. Lucas Digne's on 120k a week. Tielemans 150. Kamara 150. Martinez 150. Ollie Watkins 130. John McGinn 120. Tyrone Mings, Pau Torres, Ian Matson all on 100 grand a week. Matty Cash is on 80 grand a week.
Oh.
Like you're kind of, it's not even about for me that you're spending money. You've got to spend good money on good players, and I think this is where it's starting to catch up on Aston Villa. Is that actually a lot of those players, if they were
They're
available
average.
on a transfer, they're bang average.
Yeah, they're average. Like I remember we spoke about this before last season. You mentioned Robin Olsen, the goalie, was on 50 grand a week. I don't think he's ever played, and I don't know the details, so I might be completely wrong. But I don't remember a time when he's played. They might have played one or two games, but 50 grand for a second, third choice goalkeeper is ridiculous.
Yeah, I completely agree. The one player I'm interested in seeing is that Evan Gussand, who a lot of teams were looking at. So I'll be interested to see what impact he makes this season. But again, I've been not particularly blown away by their transfer business, and of course they've got off to a bad start. And I suppose the final point before we move on to the next game, and obviously we'll give it, is Unai Emery going under the radar here? Like they've got a -4 goal difference. They've got 1 point from 3 games. They've lost games that in old money, and by old money I mean probably last season, you wouldn't have expected them to lose 1-0 to Brentford and 3-0 to Palace. Uh, is he going under the radar? Is he getting away with it?
He's 100% getting away with it. I think the noises and the signs coming out from Villa and Emery, like his interview the last week or whenever it was really strange as well. I had loads of people messaging me saying, "Have you seen Unai Emery? What he's just said?" Like it was very, very odd. The noises coming out from him suggest that he's not happy there. So it wouldn't surprise me because he is a very good manager. I think he's doubting his ability, and anyone is doubting that. I just feel that I think if a club comes in for him that's got a bit more gravitas, I think that you could get him out of there quite easily.
Yeah, I don't disagree, mate. I think it could be an interesting season for Aston Villa, but obviously they need to start picking up points. I'm not sure they will. You've gone for a what in this game, mate?
I've gone 1-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Everton. I think Everton have enough to win that at home. I think they're on a bit of a roll. I think there's a good vibe about the place. So, and again, of course, as you've mentioned a few times, there is the Jack Grealish factor. Uh, we move on to Craven Cottage, another 3 o'clock kickoff where Fulham host Leeds United. Again, I think none of us would have expected after 3 games for Leeds to be above Fulham in the table, but that's where we find ourselves. Leeds currently sitting in 12th on 4 points. Fulham currently sitting in 18th on 2 points. Uh, how do you see this one going?
I'll give you the score and then give you some reasoning behind it. I have gone 1-1 again. I don't know what to expect from Fulham. They can turn at one time and blitz teams 2 or 3-0, and the next game you'll watch them, you think, oh, that was a good performance, and then they go and get absolutely battered. Leeds, on the other hand, I think have been relatively consistent with what they've got at their disposal. I think they've adapted to the Premier League okay. They don't look like they're going to be getting battered every single week. I know they sort of did against Arsenal, but there's levels to the game. I think from what they were trying to achieve, I think they look absolutely fine. Obviously, going away to Craven Cottage is a tough place to go, so I've gone with a draw because I don't see where the goals are coming from for both teams to go and win a game. But I think both teams have got enough to score. Fulham have obviously made a couple of signings, haven't they? But yet to play and adapt to the Premier League. So I will keep my reservations on those players before saying, "Oh, what a great signing on them." But no, I think this will be a good game. I think Leeds' style of play will always mean that you'll see a good game.
Yeah, I think to go on your last point, Fulham have made a couple of very, very intriguing signings in Chukwueze
Yes.
and Kevin. Now
Great Brazilian name, though, that is, isn't it? Kev.
absolutely, yeah, down the Wakefield Arms or wherever it is, they're definitely Kev. Uh, but Chuck Wasey, I've actually followed his career quite closely. I do follow AC Milan in Italy, so I have seen him, and he has been very inconsistent. I think it's fair to say he's had moments of absolute brilliance and then looked dire for a couple of games. But I think he's worth the punt on a loan. Kevin, obviously, lots of teams were looking at. So again, I think they may have addressed some of their issues around there, and so for me, I think they might just have a little bit too much for Leeds. I think almost bizarrely, the international break might have slowed Leeds down a little bit. Like they were feeling like they're getting up a bit of wind, and to go back into sort of not playing. Obviously, they've got some good players in James Justin, who obviously Leicester have let go. Obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's had a tough start. Lucas Perry, good goalkeeper. The one player that everyone's talking about is Anton Stack, who looks like a great player. But so for me, I am going to go 2-1 Fulham, but it wouldn't be the world's craziest idea if Leeds did go and get a result here.
Yeah, no, I think I can just see Leeds taking a point. Like you said, until I see those new Fulham players and how they perform, I'm just going to have to go with what I've seen so far. And I think they do look, Fulham won't go down. They're not in that territory of going down. But I don't think you can back them most weeks with confidence to win a game. They're going to be solid enough to finish mid-table, but they're not the team that I don't think I could ever put them in a five-pound challenge anymore after seeing what they've done last year.
Yeah, no, look, again, we have to be careful. They get angry with us. They're still angry with us. But it's a fair point, is that, the window wasn't amazing. Again, when you talk about managers that would be gettable, Silva is
Oh
one
yeah.
of those that, you know, it wasn't a massive surprise to see him on the Nottingham Forest list, although, to be fair, that was complete nonsense because Postecoglou was already in. But, he's always going to be branded with those. If West Ham get rid of Potter, as an example, you can see his name being on that list. So there is some stuff for them to navigate this season, but they will be more than fine. I have no doubt about that. And like I say, I'm actually looking forward to watching Kevin and Chuck Ways to see what they can do for Fulham. We move, and it's going to be no surprise that this is probably both of our bankers of the week. It's certainly my banker of the week if I get in there nice and early. We head north to St James's Park, where Newcastle United play Wolverhampton Wanderers. Can you make any case for Wolverhampton Wanderers here, Fran? Because Newcastle are my banker of the week, by the way, at 2-5.
They are not my banker of the week, but I can 100% understand why you would put them as your banker of the week because it's an obvious pick. My one concern with Newcastle is obviously Gordon is suspended still, I believe. I think that's correct. Obviously, they've got Voltamada and Visser in, but they're new signings, and again, you just need to see how they adapt to the team. They should still have more than enough, but I thought at 2-5, I'd probably go with a bit more value in my banker. So I do have a different team. But I think very comfortable home win. I don't think you even have to talk a lot about the game because I can't see how Wolves even hurt Newcastle's defence. Newcastle are so strong, midfield and defensively. So I just think it's a very, very comfortable Newcastle home win.
Is there a point? I guess just I don't know why I'm really trying to make the point because I've obviously told you they're my bank, but do we need to just kind of say that they managed to hold on to Jorgen Strand Larsen and that might give them a chance? I know that ironically Newcastle were the team sort of pushing for him the hardest, but he has proven to be a pretty decent Premier League number 9. At least if you've got someone that can score some goals, it does give you half a chance, even though the rest of the window looks like it's been a complete disaster.
It does. My only reservation about that is he had people like Cunha giving him service last year. Your strikers, especially the type of striker that he is, thrive on service, and I can't see where he's going to get any service. So, I mean, did he get a new contract?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, because I know there was talk about a contract and a release clause, but then I was thinking, well, if you go down, the value of that player halves automatically anyway. So, to me, with the squad that they've got, they're already doomed for relegation. So I would have flogged him to get the money in, if I'm being honest. I know it almost seals relegation, but they're at that point anyway for me. So, keeping him for this season, I think they're going to go down, and his value will get halved anyway. So, yeah, it's a bit of a shame, really, because Wolves have become a bit of a staple of the Premier League, and they just seem to be declining, which is a shame.
So, what do you think the score will be?
I've gone Newcastle 2, Wolves 0.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3-1. I think Newcastle could be quite interesting attacking wise now that they've got those extra players coming in. So I think 3-1 to Newcastle. We move to the London Stadium where West Ham host Tottenham Hotspur. Uh, how big a win was that for Graham Potter beating Nottingham Forest 3-0 away? Because having been beaten heavily by Sunderland, heavily by Chelsea, if they hadn't got that result, you would have had to have said that if they'd have lost to Spurs at home, that he would have been fired, right? So that win against Nottingham
It'd have
Forest.
had to have gone. It'd have had to have gone. It was a massive win. And then when you look back with the context of quite clearly there was a fractured relationship between Nuno and Marinakis. I mean, I was convinced Forest were going to beat them because that's how poorly I think of West Ham at the minute. But no, it was a great result for them, and it gives him that little bit of time, doesn't it, to try and recover the position. I don't, I can't see how they get anything against Spurs though. I know Spurs lost the last game, but I think Spurs are set up perfectly to beat West Ham. They've got far more pace in the team. West Ham look a very sluggish, slow team. Do you like the left back though that they've signed? West Ham think he's a good player.
Completely agree. Yeah, I think this is another one of those situations where, for me, it depends on how Thomas Frank, if he gets that midfield three right. You know, against Man City, it was absolutely bob on. Against Bournemouth, it looked completely miles away from it. And I think, against some teams, you need to have the security of a Paulinho and a Bentancur. But I think against some of the other teams, you need to have. Now, of course, they've gone out and signed Xavi Simons, who I've got to be honest with you, I'm not mad crazy on. I haven't been blown away by what he's done in his career so far. But all I'll say is that my son absolutely thinks he's one of the best players in the world. So we'll see who's right on that one. And obviously, the signing of Kolo Muani was much needed with Solanke being injured. So for me, it's about what Tottenham do with that midfield three. But it does feel like moving to Tottenham, it does feel like a very, very different Tottenham to last season, doesn't it? It feels like they have a much clearer
It
game
does.
plan and they just look a bit more calm, don't they?
Yeah, well, you also mentioned previous games of where the Spurs midfield. I think in games they can be outrun, and I think Bournemouth are a great team. You could say that they lack a little bit of technical abilities, but what Bournemouth do well is they press, they run hard, there's high energy for 90 minutes, and players like Bentancur just can't keep up with that. When I look at that West Ham team, and you've got Ward Prowse in the middle, he's the epitome of a non-runner. He's very technically good, but box to box, he's not that player. When I look at that, even Paquetá, technically very good, but you ask him to run and press, he's not that player. And I think Spurs here, like I said, with those new signings coming in, I think they could be this is the perfect game for them to dominate the ball and not have people running by them constantly. So I think pretty comfortable Spurs win for me.
So the score will be.
I've gone West Ham 1, Spurs 3.
I'm going to go 2-2. West Ham, if ever they're going to get a performance out of anything, it does tend to be against Tottenham. So for me, 2-2, an entertaining game on Sky Sports 5:30 kickoff. I really don't like Saturday 8 o'clock kickoffs in the Premier League. I've got to be honest with you. That's an opportunity for me if I'm going to watch football to watch some Spanish football or something else. And for me, I'm not a mad fan on it, but it is what it is. Brentford host Chelsea in a London derby. Is this your banker of the week for the away team, or or are you going Liverpool?
No, I've gone Chelsea. I think for the value, they are 7 to 10, or I've got them at 7 to 10 against a Brentford team who I think are very, very poor, very inexperienced manager. My only reservation about this after I put them up is uh, a few of their players play for Brazil. Esteval, João Pedro had a grueling game, lost 1-0 to Bolivia, I think they did, in
Yep,
minus
correct.
4,000,
Yep.
whatever it is. And they're going to come back and potentially be knackered. Obviously, Delap's injured, so what forward have they got to rotate? So that's my only reservation, but I don't think it's enough to take me off them. I think they're still far too good, and they have started. Even though again, similar to Arsenal, the performances haven't been top draw, they have started well. So yeah, banker for me, 7 to 10. I think is fantastic value.
Yeah, they've scored a load of goals. They look defensively sound. Like you say, it's
Mm,
difficult to make a case of where Brentford are going to score goals. And of course, Brentford have conceded quite a few as well. So, uh, yeah, I don't disagree. I do think this will be an away win. I do see Chelsea winning. I think it could be quite tight. I think Brentford at home are a different proposition. So I'm going to go Brentford 1, Chelsea 2, and it might need a late winner for Chelsea, but I do expect them to come through that. They've got enough quality in midfield there to dominate the game, and defensively, like I say, they look sound. So. And it's quite interesting for me this season looking at some of those new Chelsea players that are starting to break through. Esteval, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Obviously,
mm,
the young English centre back. I really like the look of Josh. Pang, I think his name is. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I know what I mean.
Like it's
Let you
quite
say it.
interesting. It's interesting to see. Yeah, I'm worse than Paul Merson, aren't I? It's interesting to see what Chelsea do with all of these ins and outs, but actually they end up. And of course, Garnacho, it'll be interesting to see what he does at Chelsea. Obviously, signing late on in the window, but yeah, I can't see anything other than a Chelsea victory. There, we move to Sunday, and we've only got the two games on the Sunday because we've got so many 3 o'clock kickoffs on the Saturday. Uh, the other one that probably could have been in all of our bankers. Burnley at home to Liverpool. Obviously, we're fully expecting Isak to play. The one thing I would like to think about is how do you get Isak and Ekatike, which I've learned by the way since I've been away, so that's at least some progress, uh, in the same team because you're not going to drop Cody Gakpo because he's doing fantastic off the left. Salah is Salah. Where do you get them both in the team, or do you not think that's what they're going to do? They're going to literally have one of them, like Weather Vane, one on one off, very similar type of players, and just maintain that structure.
This is the conundrum. So for me, I've been seeing loads of people putting their teams up, and Ekatike's off the left. But like you said, Gakpo's been playing well and is a left winger. Ekatike is a striker, and that's I then put Ekatike into my team, and along comes Isak. So I'm like, oh, you just don't know what you're going to get. My personal opinion, I think you have to play one or the other. If I'm being honest. And I can see that being Isak. For this game, I can see it being Ekatike there. I don't think Isak will come straight into the team. Ekatike has been performing. I think you just kill the kid's confidence if you bring Isak straight in. It's not a bad situation to have though with those two nines, is it? If going, oh, one of them's not fired, bring one in, one of them's injured, so it's not a
Yeah,
bad situation. But I think the one thing they can do though is they could kill Ekatike if he gets dropped and doesn't start playing. You can go, thanks for all those performances you've put up early doors. You've looked brilliant. Thank you very much.
yeah. I mean, look, so obviously we're all on the Liverpool hype train. Obviously, fantastic, absolutely fantastic window. Of course, I get all of that. The thing that I would say is that I'm not sure getting rid of Luis Diaz was the right thing personally, and the reason why I say that is across the course of a season, I don't really trust Chiesa to continue with the success of coming off the bench and kind of contributing the way he has, and obviously to have Rio, who's 16, I think maybe just 17, as your other sort of left wing option. For me, they've left themselves, unless they're going to change shape, which is very possible. I think they've left themselves short in that kind of attacking options other
Mm.
than the nine. So the nine, I think we could all probably argue the best number nine options in the world between the two of them. I don't think there's another team that I could think of that have got two number nines as good as them. But on the wing, I just feel like they feel a bit light now.
No, I agree. I think the only thing that you can say is I think you might have answered the question. I think they trust Ngoma, whatever his name is. I think they trust him completely. You say even though he's 16, 17, I think he is going to be that option. And there's a couple of other clubs around the world that are blooding youngsters like Max Dowman, Ranieri. I think that the kids are starting to get a bit more trust. And I think they have to, because if you're going to bring in people like Isak for 140 million, you're going to have to shuffle the pack a little bit. And when you've got those youngsters who are on the outskirts, I think you're going to start to see them get a few minutes because they have to if they're going to start buying these top players for big money. But I think it's a great opportunity for the kid, isn't it? It's a Gakpo on the left. He's not going to perform every week. He's going to get some minutes, and he's already impacted one game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just worry over the course of a season whether, like I say, yeah, I just worry that they're not as strong in those positions as they have been uh, in the past, and that might become their undoing. But obviously, like you say, maybe you start Isak out wide or Etikikes out wide, and maybe you've got some options there as well that I'm not aware of. But uh, Burnley, however, again for me are one result away from having a horrendous start. Obviously, beating Sunderland at home has put them in a position where we're not talking about their form. And to be fair to them, they've had a very, very difficult start to the season, right? They've played both Tottenham and Manchester United away, and now they're playing Liverpool in their first 4 games. So for me, I don't think we can actually truly kind of judge where Burnley are at yet because these aren't the teams that we're expecting them to be.
No, I just fear with Burnley that they've come up and not strengthened enough to have an impact going forward and scoring goals. And then when you take away their strength of defending that they had last season, and they've lost the goalkeeper and their centre half, I just go, you've lost your strength. you haven't really signed players that excite me going forward. And I go, wow, that's a game changer of a transfer. I just don't think they had enough. So I think they're the one team I can nail on to say you're going down, along with Wolves.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, at the moment, I don't have any argument with that. And again, obviously, not expecting them to get any points in this game. So, how do you see this one ending up?
I've got 0-3.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm going to go one more though, because I think, like you say, bringing on one of Isak or Ekitike when the legs get tired, I think there'll be options. Salah obviously is good for a late goal, so I'm going to go 0-4, relatively
Just
comfortable.
Just on the Salah point, I think he's looked absolutely dreadful this
Yeah,
season. He scored a late goal on the first game,
yeah,
didn't he, for fantasy
yeah.
people to mask his performance? But I think his performances over these first few games have been dreadful. And when you mentioned they're lacking on squad depth on the wings, he looks like he's coming to the end of his pomp entirely. So therefore, even more so lacking in wingers and squad depth because he's never going to be dropped. But to me, he looks like he's on the decline.
No, 100%. He absolutely is. Uh, but being, look, if I want to be really candid, I've not been particularly impressed with any team so far this season. I think it's all been pretty dire, not great standard. But I think Liverpool have just got more. Like, you go back to that Bournemouth game. I really enjoyed what Bournemouth did, and with 5 minutes to go, it was 2-2. You're thinking that's a great point for Bournemouth, and then Liverpool just find a way. Against Arsenal, like you said, Arsenal were on top for most of the first half, but Liverpool find a way. That's the difference between Championship teams and second places, that you find a way. But I think that you can get a Liverpool this season, and I think everybody's glazing Van Dijk uh, as being some second coming. I haven't seen, for me, Liverpool look more get at a ball than I've ever seen them, for a long time. But they do tend to just win games.
Yeah, I think on the Van Dijk front, I think he's been seriously hampered this year by how bad Canate's been. He has
Yeah,
been a bomb scare. So I think he's probably had to do a bit more defending on the other side to cover Canate, which has then meant they've looked a bit more gettable. But I thought Van Dijk absolutely mopped up Gyökeres the other week. Though I thought he was superb against him.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't disagree with that point either. But again, I'm not massively excited by what he's doing for Arsenal yet. I think he will get better, but at the moment, I
Yeah,
think. Uh, Talking of which, we move to the Manchester derby that you've said that you're not that fascinated in. But uh, the talking point for me is Benjamin Sesko has looked like a £12.50 player, not a £70 million player. Is this another strike of the Manchester United recruitment curse, do you think, or is it far too early to be even thinking about it?
I think it's far too early. However, I think you put any top player, the only players who can do this sort of thing, like when Ronaldo came into Manchester United at 37, 38 years old and had an impact, I think you have to be of a certain level. Ibrahimovic came in and dragged them kicking and
Yep.
screaming to victories. I think you have to be a certain player to be able to do it now. I think United are that poor of a club and of a team, like the atmosphere around the players, the expectation is still there, even though they're very poor. I don't think Sesko is going to be of the level required of yet to pull them kicking and screaming to score goals. He very well could be in the future, and as could Rasmus Højlund, by the way. He could go away and absolutely start tearing it up. But I think it just highlights the environment of Manchester United at the minute, which after one game against Arsenal, we were singing their praises, going, oh, they look like they're going to be moving forward. To me, they just look the same team now after a bit more evidence of a few games. They look the same team from last season. So it doesn't excite me. The one thing I will say on this game, though, is I've had my fingers burned too many times with Man U playing bigger teams when you go, they're going to get battered. So I've gone for a 2-2 draw in this game because I've not been impressed with Manchester City. And Man U always raise their games against the big teams. So I've gone for 2-2 because I think Man City have looked very poor and Man U always raise the game.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. Manchester City have had a horrific start to the season, as they always do. But this one does maybe feel a little bit different. It does feel like teams aren't scared of them anymore. Uh,
They've lost the fear factor 100%.
yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it. I do still think Manchester City are going to come back, and that they will be obviously the team to beat. And if you beat Manchester City, I have a feeling that you are the champions. But it's been a very, very poor start to the season, and maybe hopefully Haaland banging 5 goals for Norway yesterday gets him back. Not that he's been out of form, but gets him back sharp. Obviously, it looks like Marmoush's picked up an injury. Shirky's picked up an injury. So they might have to kind of rely on some of those more historical players. But I can't
Yeah,
look away from.
Foden.
Well,
Surely Foden's the one in there. He's not. He's just dropped off a cliff, hasn't he? Like, what's happened to the lad? He's gone from winning the Premier League Player of the Year to being a bang average footballer very quickly. Like, we've got to start seeing him come back. It's such a shame.
Well, we might need to, enough because we haven't got to. We're definitely running out of time, but we definitely might need to at some point touch on, does Pep Guardiola kill as many players as he makes players great? Because when you look at
100%.
when you look at what's happened to Grealish, and again, I know there's way more to it than that, but he's been released at Everton, and now he looks like the old Jack Grealish again, whatever that is. And you might still think that wasn't great, but he looks like the old Jack Grealish again. Like, what have you done to him at Manchester City, where you've got all of the ball to make him look bang average? And Phil Foden's fallen foul of it. Doku doesn't really do what we want to do. Savinha doesn't really do what we want to do. Like, there's lots of examples of wingers and forward players that don't end up being, even though Guardiola tries to play his football, but not for now, but definitely one to keep an eye on. And so you've gone 2-2. I'm going to go 2-1 to Manchester City. I think they will have too much for Manchester United, and I think that with the new goalkeeper as well for Manchester United, who's not Donnarumma, obviously he's not quite at the same level. I think it could be just a home win. And so for our £5 challenge, Fran, you can go first, mate. What have you gone with?
Well, I've gone for pretty much all the teams that we agree on because our results for once are pretty different, our predictions. So I've gone for Arsenal, Newcastle. I've got Spurs, which you haven't, and then Chelsea and Liverpool. So fiver pays 50 quid.
So I've got some of those, but different. I've got Arsenal, Everton, Newcastle, Chelsea, and Bournemouth. And £5 returns 90, just shy of £94. Odds of nearly 18.
So say that again. Arsenal, Everton, Newcastle,
Chelsea, and Bournemouth.
Chelsea and Bournemouth. Lovely. And it pays £90.
£94.
94, lovely. Well, we're both minus 10 so far on this. So we could do with a little winner to take us into the positive.
We definitely
which
could.
Yeah, but on our bankers, so we're both positive on our bankers at the minute. And I say with a Chelsea Newcastle victory, that'll put us into a nice little buffer. So if we lose one, we'll still be positive. So we're not doing too bad on them.
No, yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on it this season. So, Fran, thank you as always. Good to get back to it. Where can people reach out and find us, bud?
To listen to the episodes, we're on Spotify and we're on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Just search for The Atmosphere is Electric. And then social media, we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we are on TikTok. Again, search for The Atmosphere is Electric or TAIE Podcast.
TikTok. Fran, as always, my favourite hour and a bit of the week. Thank you very much. Look forward to watching some football this weekend. Look forward to catching up with you, talking all about it next week. In the meantime, buddy, have a great weekend. I'll speak to you soon.